Board of Public Safety Deer Management Subcommittee meeting. Michelle, I guess first order of business, we should take attendance.
Okay. Marshall Scott Collier.
Here.
Board member Jeff Baker.
Here.
Captain James Mundell.
Here.
All right. And who else do we have with us? Sergeant Windling?
I'm here.
Yep.
All right. Okay, that looks like everyone.
Okay, present and accounted for. So first order of business is approval of the minutes. I took a look at them earlier. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes. Ask for a second. I thought I saw Jeff nod, so we'll take that as a second. Any discussion about the minutes? Any additions or corrections? No. No. Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Well, that was a resounding yes. Okay, so minutes are approved. So Michelle or Rick, do we have anyone in the queue for public comment?
I certainly don't see anybody.
Okay. Well, if they come in, we can make time.
Yeah, if they come in, you're right. We can acknowledge them at some point, right?
Sure, absolutely. That's what this is for. So moving on. So we'll talk about the survey results and the review thereof. Any updates to that, Rick?
No, I was really hoping just to go through the plan that we've put together.
Right, I was looking at the minutes, sorry. Yeah, okay. So we're going to talk about the plan. Which is really what I meant. I'm glad this is being recorded to catch all my foibles. Great. Now my wife has proof that I've been wrong. Oh, well. So deer management plan.
It happens. So I don't know if anybody had time to actually read it. We tried to, it has grown a little bit since you had seen it previously. In the goals and objectives section of the document, I tried to highlight in yellow the additions or changes. And there are a few places where I deleted text. So I tried to make note of that in the goals and objectives section of the document, which starts on page 5. And then I added in the first 4 pages are basically, if you read through it, intended to be more or less an introduction, and were in large part fashioned off of the Department of Conservation's management plan. As you know, I did my fair share of plagiarism and followed a lot of what they had in their plan in that first 4 pages. So if you'd like to go through the whole document, we can do that. If you want to go through page or section by section, we can do that. It's really up to you guys. At this point, I don't know if you had, again, an opportunity to read through it or not, or already have some comments prepared.
Well, I did have time to read through it. And I think we could my suggestion would be that we just skip ahead to page 5, which is where all the major revisions begin. If that makes sense to everybody. Goals and objectives.
Sounds good.
Okay. And if we want to just discuss any of the highlighted parts, I didn't particularly have any issues under goal 1. I did note that under objective A, which was assessing and monitoring the population, that there is a question of cost. Correct me if I'm wrong. I thought that Captain and Sergeant, that you all had done the survey in the past. And is my memory accurate there?
That's correct. So the cost is basically whatever overtime is incurred to conduct the deer counts.
Okay,
And typically it takes 4, it just depends, but basically the last time that we did it, we used 4 officers to conduct the surveys. And each night that we surveyed, I believe it was for a 4-hour period.
okay,
But the cost is, correlates. There's a correlation to the size of the survey area. So
okay.
really depends on how large of an
Right.
area to do the counts in. And our thoughts originally were to conduct counts in 3 separate 10 square mile areas, one being
Mhm.
like kind of the northeastern
Mhm.
corridor, on the southeastern corridor, and then a corridor along Highway 100, kind of in the center of the city from east to west. But obviously all that's
Okay.
easily changeable and flexible. So to what everybody would like to do, I don't think, we don't have to be locked into anything necessarily, but
Right.
we'd be willing to.
So I think the cost is probably, well, I don't want to use the term nominal, but something that is estimatable. We probably would want to include that in the strategy just as a note to council, regarding the one time or, sort of a cost of this thing, just so they have an idea. But correct me if I'm wrong, it's sort of baked into the overall police budget, correct?
I would say not actually.
Not actually?
Yeah, and I think, I don't know if Brad or Rick has the numbers, but I wasn't here when they did it the first time around. The cost for an officer on overtime, and they were trained to conduct the surveys, was
Yeah.
cheaper than hiring one of the professional consulting firms that do this. So that was the advantage of using our own people. We got them trained, and it would appear to be costly, but it's actually more costly to hire an outside company to do it.
Okay.
Rick, is that your recollection?
I would think that's accurate, correct. I'm sure that we have the costs for the prior survey, and we can locate that number too and include that in there. And or I think when we presented the additional areas to council, Brad, didn't we have an estimate of cost there too, I believe?
We did. I'm trying to locate,
Okay.
add something,
Well,
but
The other thing I'd add, it's not budgeted obviously right at the moment because there was no plan in place to do it. I believe that the reserve funds and the Prop P money was where the cost would come, so it wouldn't impact the city's budget. What's already been budgeted. So I think we'd put it in as overtime. I will say, now that I'm thinking about it, there's been quite a few events that have been canceled for this year. So there was money budgeted for overtime for those events, and now those events aren't happening. Actually, you're probably right. There is money sitting in the budget for overtime, which
Okay.
to Sam or to Rick to allocate those for this purpose, I would guess.
Yeah, and I would suggest we just note here, maybe the prior cost the last time it was done, just so we have a general idea of cost. Does anyone disagree with that? Okay.
Good
We
idea.
can do that. Yep.
Yeah, we can just slide that in. Any questions about strategy 1 or 2? Anyone disagree? Have another idea? Okay. Objective B, No change. The change here is minor, just removing, Aaron's name as a specific person and just, leaving it as Department of Conservation, which makes complete sense. Unless someone objects, I think we, move on from that and accept that change. Objective C, just a new general statement about, supporting and encouraging safe hunting. First strategy, considering ordinance modifications to include development of an ordinance to allow combining of properties. And the addition here is subject to HOA approval if applicable and subject to existing hunting restrictions. And I'm pretty sure that would refer to I think right now the restrictions on hunting are limited to west of 109, if I'm remembering right.
Well, it depends on what type of weapon you're going to use to hunt. So basically, east of 109, you can hunt as long as you have meet the 3-acre minimum for a single parcel at this time. You can hunt by archery or crossbow or shotgun. There's restrictions on rifle. I think you can hunt east of 109 with an air gun, I believe.
Right.
No.
But it's a
other-
3-acre minimum. It's got to be a single parcel, not people combining.
Correct. Yeah. So,
Okay.
So if the ordinance was, you would still have to meet the requirement outlined in the hunting ordinance.
Okay. So this is simply suggesting that, that the council consider an ordinance change to allow combining properties, and council could take up at that time, the level of detail they wish regarding that, whether they wish to restrict or keep it the same east and west of 109.
Correct. And I guess I would suggest that, well, I guess a lot of these things could come to the forefront with city council in a number of ways, but I could see that this committee could drive a lot of those items as far as pushing them forward first to Board of Public Safety and maybe then to city council. And that might be something we do later, is talk about a schedule or a priority in terms of these items or these objectives. Or maybe that's a discussion with the full board perhaps. But some of these, and Michelle and I have talked about this, there's a number of them that are fairly low hanging fruit that would seem to be fairly easy to move forward with, after this document may be accepted by the council. Some are a little more difficult, would require more work. Maybe they could wait or be lower priority, but I would think that this committee could certainly talk about, what's the highest priority given the time of year and where we're at and other things, and develop a plan to move forward.
Okay. Moving on there, we have the addition of items regarding additional ordinance changes. So requiring of the marking of arrows for bow hunters, advance notice to neighboring property owners of permission and intent to hunt, and providing advance notice to the precinct of permission and intent to hunt. Any thoughts or discussion on that?
I mean, if you folks feel that's too detailed and you don't want that in there at this point, I'm certainly open to that. It's kind of a question of how detailed you want it to be right now.
My personal belief is we leave it in because I think we should make suggestions to the full board and then subsequently to the council. And it gives them ideas to take forward. Any disagreement?
No, I agree that stuff that's come up in discussion, leading up to where we're at now.
Yeah. I mean, is anyone opposed to any of those 3 items? One or all?
No.
No, I didn't think so. Okay. We'll accept those by acclamation. Strategy 2, supporting and encouraging expanded opportunities for archery hunting on private land. Essentially, go ahead. Essentially, there's two new items. So developing a program to match licensed hunters with interested private property owners, a suggestion that the precinct would check that the hunters are licensed. And then, you know, perhaps setting something up, a registry or something to identify and recruit, or maybe the term is connect landowners, HOA organizations that have common properties and connect them to hunters. Any thoughts on those? I'm not sure that we need, you know, what, do hunters have to go to the precinct and let you know that they're licensed?
Currently, no.
No.
Is there a benefit to that anyone can see? I'm not necessarily seeing it, but I'm not a hunter, so.
I mean, I think it's just so if from the aspect that if the city is involved in finding people to hunt, that we're kind of vetting them to ensure that they're properly licensed. I mean, that's about all that we can do. I mean, that if they're licensed, properly licensed, then we know they can hunt and know that they have that. So I think probably Rick, if I'm on the right track there with that, I think that was the reason.
That was exactly the reason, just to say if we're going to get involved in it, we're going to help to ensure or tell residents that we're vetting those hunters, and that was the way to do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is this good? Do you feel this is an imposition on the precinct?
That's what I was just going to get to. I wouldn't think there'd be a tremendous number of people doing this.
Right.
It would become overwhelming to us to keep track. You know, Brad, what are your thoughts on that?
No, I think it would be fine. I mean, it's, I think if council were to adopt this practice, I don't think it would be a burden to the police department in any way. I probably ask that people would be required to come during normal business hours while we have desk personnel on duty to do that, comply with that requirement if it comes to be, but I don't see a problem with it at all.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Very good. Again, unless someone has an objection, I think we should, you know, accept these two new insertions under strategy 2.
I agree.
Agree.
Any objection? Hearing none, we'll move on. The next time, obviously, we struck the other sub bullet under strategy 2, developing, you know, you can see it there. Anyone object to that deletion? I think it was subsumed in the earlier part of the document. Hearing none, I think that's fine. We accept that. Strategy 3, supporting managed hunts in the city of Wildwood. And this is where I think cost will become obviously a greater factor. But the first change here under supporting and promoting such hunts on public lands, simply promoting awareness of and raising interest in existing managed hunts through the city's social media and website. Obviously a low cost opportunity here simply to get the word out. Anybody have an objection to the addition of that item to the strategy? I think it's probably very minor cost in time for the city. Okay. Hearing none.
Takes advantage of what else is out there already. So
right. And just and it's another way to, you know, let the public know what is going on. So developing and recommending managed hunts on city or private properties, working with the Department of Conservation. Here again, we're just, you know, I think it's incumbent on us to figure out at least a cost estimate. I think the city, if I remember reading correctly in the past, Town and Country did this. They hired a group, or did they use their own police officers, or was that Ellisville?
So I think this is a little different than culling program. So this would this would relate to citizens being able to hunt on city or private properties. Is that right, Rick? Not actually a culling program.
I think it could
Well-
be a culling program.
Okay.
Because they use the term managed hunts, so, which is immediately what came to my mind, but
But it could be either or, I think is the idea.
Okay.
It's a little bit gray in terms of exactly what we would recommend moving forward with there. So I guess that's the question. Should we be a little more explicit in that regard and say this could include, you know, X and Y and Z with cost for each? Or, you know, approximate costs potentially.
well, I guess in my mind, so what would a managed hunt look like if it wasn't hiring, you know, a group that does a culling, for lack of a better term?
So you'd have either city property that's identified as area that can be hunted, or
Okay,
private property that the landowners are wishing for hunting to occur on. And then you would have, basically you would have to have a lottery for hunters because you have to, you know, limit the number of hunters. So the Department of Conservation would recommend most likely what number of deer, you know, they feel should harvested in the specific area. And then you know, allow the respective number of hunters and days of hunting to be in line with the recommendations from the MDC.
So that
Okay.
would be a hunt with private residents or private hunters.
Yeah.
In that case, on potentially private property, or it could be city property, all under the watchful eye of MDC. Versus we
Okay.
could have a managed hunt where the police were sharpshooters. And did it,
perhaps. I
in
guess
that
my
manner.
confusion comes when we insert private property in here, because it seems to me we sort of address that under strategy 2 regarding private property.
I think we have, but this could take it a step further than that, I think. Instead of just
Okay. So
encouraging-
say, okay. All right.
yeah, so it would be
More organized,
pulling
I guess.
in, yeah, more organized with MDC, right? And more than one hunter or two, yeah.
Okay.
Special time, special season, special weeks where it would occur rather than the regular season.
For background, I think it probably would be good to, you know, find out, you know, what a perhaps a managed hunt, you know, on public properties, a culling by one of these companies would cost. Does anyone have any familiarity with those groups? Or would anyone have an interest in making a couple calls, just so we get an idea of a cost, just so we have that either in the document or at least in our back pocket when we have to explain this? That will be a question I think the larger group and even council would have.
Rick, for some reason, I find the figure of $400 per deer that is culled by a professional company is the approximate cost. I'm just pulling that off the top of my head. I think we
Yeah,
already have our in our research. I don't know if Michelle remember, but we can
we can find that.
find
Yeah,
that.
maybe, yeah, we have it in prior documents. Maybe we just pull it up and just make a note there.
And I do know the Department of Conservation, they're starting to do some of their own managed hunting. And I mean,
Are they?
yeah. So, I mean, they're, I mean, I think if you're looking for more efficiency and to reduce costs, it's probably, well, it's certainly less expensive to do it yourself than to hire. But we would have to more conversation. I think.
Right, Right,
the money.
and ultimately that may be part of the overall strategy as well. We'll start with these few things and see how
Sure.
it goes in a year and, reassess, and do we need to go beyond that perhaps?
Right.
Right, but have put the option is there, council can always decide.
Yeah.
How far they want to go in it to start, which makes sense. Do you provide options?
Marshall, I found from an article in 2011, which is a while ago, the Town and Country Sharpshooter Program, which aimed at killing up to 300 deer. They hired that company they were going to spend $133,000. White Buffalo was the sharpshooter company, and they will be paid $100,000. It says the city will spend an additional $27,000 to process deer meat, which will be donated to share the harvest. And then the city plans to spend another $4,000 on 2 reports to check on the deer population, and another $2,000 is budgeted for deer bait. So that's a little bit of an old
Gotcha.
article, but gives you a bit of an idea.
Okay. And that was to cull how many deer? Estimated?
They were aimed at killing up to 300 because they had, that would have been their target number based on the.
Got it. Up to 300, so 100,000. Okay.
Mhm.
All right. Well, that sort of gives everyone a price range anyways.
Mhm.
Starting. Probably
I'm
more
happy
than
to
that.
look into that more.
Okay. Good stuff. Any other questions or concerns about that bullet?
So just one point, if I can
Yeah.
say something briefly. So I guess part of that, or one option under that would be the police providing that as a sharpshooter service, would it not? And the cost there would definitely be costs involved if we went that direction. Presumably there might be less, but we could certainly also try to rough or put together what we think that would be if we want to, if you agree with that, if that's agreeable.
Maybe
to the
just for a
board.
comparison. But whether that's the best use of our police resources or not, that's a different conversation. But I think it's fair to at least understand the cost.
I can't speak for the Wildwood Precinct. So
Well, I was just,
if that's
just
not something we
thinking
want
that-
to do,
I was just thinking that. So we've had a change of police chiefs. So that would be something I'd certainly
Yeah,
top, that everybody's good with us stalking deer. So
right. Right. And obviously that would always be the case.
we have those, there are police officers obviously that are deer hunters and are comfortable doing it. And, it's not a requirement that everybody's got to go out and find deer. So
Right.
we certainly have people that would do it and be wanting to do it.
Okay. Good to know. Any other questions or concerns about that? Okay, moving on then to objective D. So this has to do mostly with vehicle strikes. The first strategy is monitor and report on the number and location. And I believe this is you guys, the police are already doing this. Is that correct?
Yes.
You guys track that already. Okay.
Oh, yeah. It's included in the annual crash analysis.
Right. Okay.
That'll be published, I believe, next month here. So I think, Captain, you had planned on getting it out for the next Board of Public Safety meeting, I think. So
Right.
all that
Okay.
will be available in July. So yeah, we already track all that information.
Speaking of that,
Very good. Yep.
Rick, do you want the final version presented there or at the board meeting in July? Or does it need to be approved by the board in some manner? It's basically our report, so.
I think usually it's presented primarily for information. I don't recall
Okay.
an official approval of it. It was more provided for information and questions.
Okay,
Because I
Kind of
think
a
you guys
pass.
usually have a bound copy. Yeah.
right.
Yeah, and it
Kind of a pass through that it was presented to the board who moved it on to the council. Okay,
Right. But it's your report, should be nothing for the board to approve, really. Just accept.
okay.
It's good information to review and
Yes.
evaluate.
Yep. Absolutely. You know, prior to making decisions, but then even a year or so after we have, to see if it's had any impact, that's going to be one of the first things I think the public's going to be interested in. Okay. Then strategy 2, consider implementation of new technologies, which may be able to reduce the number or severity of deer strikes. I know we had the group of students that had come up with some interesting ideas. Of course, it all comes down to cost, but just as a goal, and we all know technology changes all the time. So there may be
It
something.
does. Yes, it does.
So I think it's good to have that in there without being specific, because we aren't going to, you know, that's not for this document necessarily. But as opportunities come along, you know, we can consider it, and council can consider it, and the, you know, the cost ramifications as well. Any objections with the addition of that? Okay, hearing none, moving on. Goal 2, educate, essentially educating the public. The change here is strategy 4. Basically adding the term educate, you know, into promotion. And then a more detailed discussion about, you know, about deer damage control methods, and using the city's current resources, a website, as a way of promoting and getting the information to the public. Which I think we had discussed at the last meeting. So, and if I recall, most everyone was in support of that. Any objections to including that? Hearing none, by acclamation. And that, yep.
Sorry to interrupt, Marshall.
No, go ahead.
Rick, I know we were doing social media stuff last year. Do you have any feedback on that? I mean, how often we did it? It was kind of tips type of thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, we hired a woman to help us put that campaign together. I think overall it was very good, and we may have had maybe one day where it maybe got off the rails a little bit, and there were some comments that got a little heated, or maybe some folks were a little bit too concerned over some things that were stated. But otherwise, I mean, I thought it went very well, and I could see us doing something similar again this year. It's not that expensive to put that together. We can almost repeat or use what we did last year and
Right.
as a starting point.
Yeah, I think you have a good template in place, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So before we summarize here, any other questions or concerns about the document in general? Okay. Michelle or Rick, do we have anybody in the queue from the public who has waited patiently?
I'm not seeing anybody.
Okay.
I ask one quick question.
Yeah.
In which area does the no feeding ordinance plan fit, and should that be notated on here?
And I believe, wasn't that?
I think we do say propose a no feed ordinance under
Yes,
objective
under
C.
objective C.
Okay.
Strategy 1.
Thank you.
Yep. And for some reason, I had always thought there was such an ordinance in place. So I know my neighbors have talked about it before.
There is one in Chesterfield.
Okay, yeah. And-
If you're in a chronic waste disease zone, so the MDC from year to year, they'll identify counties or
okay.
as a chronic waste zone. So if you fall within a zone, they regulate and enforce no feeding if you're in the D zone. So
If we're in that zone, yeah.
yeah, and we had been several years ago. I think we were in a CWD zone for just 1 year, I think, but then some haven't been.
Okay,
So,
but that's not something current that obviously currently is on the books in Wildwood, but certainly something worthy of consideration. Given everything
No,
else.
it's not something we can enforce at this time.
Gotcha. Okay. Very good. So just going back over it, there are a couple of cost estimates. I think we were just going to look for it just to tag a note in here. I think that was the majority of any of the suggested additions, or at least, you know, having an addendum so that we have that in the record going forward. So unless there are any other questions or concerns, I think we should probably take this to the full board at our next meeting, if that's appropriate, Rick.
I would be fine with that if that's what you'd like to do. We can do a little more work on this, and I think at this point we could email it out to you if you like, with, you know,
Okay.
with additional.
But do you need more time than the next scheduled meeting with the board?
I think we can certainly make it happen. No, I think we're fine.
Okay. All right.
I'll
Any
be Michelle.
objections?
Michelle will be working on those costs.
Passing the buck, an American tradition.
You got you.
Okay. Good stuff. Any other questions or concerns by the group? I know Jeff's wondering when he's going to get to eat with his family down in Florida.
Don't matter. Not at all.
I want to know where they're planning on eating.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, they stopped here at the donut hole.
That's where you
It's
go
a
after
good
a
little
good day of
spot if you
fishing.
ever been down here.
Oh, I
Yeah.
know where you're at.
They got
Yeah.
good food.
Yes,
Yep.
they do.
Yeah, we were just down here a few
Awesome.
weeks ago and came back down.
Nice. Good deal. All right. With that, let's see, what's the clock on the wall say? All right, 6:38. I know there's another meeting at 7, and we've been asked to try and get out of here, get off the system by 6:45, so I think we're going to make that. I guess they got to give the gerbil a break before it has to keep running to power the system for the next meeting. It's always fair. So give them a carrot. With that, I'm going to presume that no one will object to a motion to adjourn. Hearing none, accepted. So, hey, thanks everybody for joining in. Those local and those from afar in Florida. Appreciate it very much. You're a dedicated soul, Jeff.
I appreciate it.
All right, thanks everybody.
Okay.